A reading from 2 Kings. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master, because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from leprosy. Now the Arameans on one of their raids had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel, and she served Naaman's wife. She said to her mistress, "If only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his leprosy." So Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, "Go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel." He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel, which read, "When this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his leprosy." When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, "Am I God, to give death or life? That this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Just look and see how he is trying to pick a quarrel with me." But when Elisha, the man of God, heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, he sent a message to the king. "Why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me, that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel." So Naaman came with his horses and chariots and halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him saying, "Go, wash in the Jordan 7 times, and your flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean." But Naaman became angry and went away saying, "I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord, his God, and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the leprosy. Are not Abana and Pathar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash in them and be clean?" He turned and went away in a rage. But his servants approached and said to him, "Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when he has said, all you have to do is wash and be clean?" So he went down and immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored, like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company. He came and stood before him and said, "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." May the words of my lips and the thoughts of our hearts and minds be always acceptable in your sight, O God, our Redeemer. Amen. Today's story is an interesting one, not so much because of what happens, but more because of the cast of characters involved and their interactions with one another. There is a king in a neighboring kingdom, Aram, and the commander of his army, Naaman. In Israel, there is a king and a prophet, Elisha. But there is also a young slave girl captured from Israel and living at the home of Naaman, serving his wife, who has a place in this story. Naaman's attendants have a role, as does the messenger of Elisha. The only characters who are named are Naaman, the renowned commander and strong soldier of Aram, and Elisha, the famous prophet of Israel, known for his words and deeds. Behind these men are a cast of characters unnamed, toiling away in their everyday lives, who move the story along with their knowledge and their wisdom. Neither king is particularly impressive. One gladly sends his chief commander to the other kingdom with the hope of being healed, Clearly, this is in his own interest. A king relied heavily on the commander of the army, and good ones were hard to come by. If Naaman could be healed of his leprosy, he could continue in his role. The other king withers when approached by a foreigner with his request. He's the most powerful man in the kingdom, yet he whines about having no ability to grant someone's request. And to many of his subjects, he may as well be God. He did have control over their lives, including in war, when many could be killed or captured as slaves. The young slave girl, surely the least powerful person mentioned because of gender, age, and class, is in fact the one who has the solution to Naaman's problem. He needs to go to the prophet Elisha in Israel. She tells her mistress, who passes the message on to her powerful husband. Well, Naaman expects that when he gets there, there will be a great show of power, an audience with the great prophet, and a wondrous cure. It is in fact a messenger of Elisha, also without rank, who is sent to Naaman to pass on Elisha's cure. Finally, the nameless, faceless attendants of Naaman are the ones who convince him to simply do what the messenger has told him. Such contrasts between class, expertise, nations, genders, ages, and so on remind us of the continuing problems that plague our communities, and the vulnerability of those who speak up is evident. However, in the story, God works through the least. I attended the Diocesan Outreach Conference last week where Bishop Priscilla was the keynote speaker. She has recently been at the Lambeth Conference and at the World Council of Churches, hearing diverse perspectives on Christianity in various contexts, wrestling with the effects of COVID and our emergence from strict restrictions, and also cultural dynamics around the globe. Much has changed for us in a relatively short period of time historically. Bishop Priscilla's topic was truth, justice, and reconciliation. One of the things she said was that the purpose of decolonization was the rehumanization of us all in the image of God and in the love that God is. The rehumanization of us all in the image of God and in the love that God is. Out of or because of God's love and within God's love, all of our relationships exist. We are all connected despite our various attempts at disconnection. It is in or through one another that we find God and that we experience love and grace. That is true in the story from 2 Kings, written nearly 3,000 years ago, and it is still true today. As we consider recent history, conflicts in the 20th century, and the history of our nation beginning 500 years ago, though it actually began thousands of years before that, we can see how relationships factor into the equation. Relationships between nations, cooperation between leaders of nations, conflict between neighboring nations, the ordinary citizens caught up in events brought upon them, their responses reaching across divisions, spanning centuries, and God's place in all of this, showing no favoritism or partiality, steadfastly calling us into relationship and offering us guidance and wisdom in our relationships with others and with all of creation. As we know from experience, relationships are complicated by us, by our egos, by our hurts, our fears, But then we try to be in relationships with others who have their own hurts and fears and egos. We have and we will get it wrong. However, that is not permission to stop trying. Sometimes we do have to make a decision to walk away for our own well-being. But generally, we are called to continue in a process of rehumanization for all of us in the image of God. There are voices for us to listen to, strange ways of doing things that bear considering, voices we have discounted who actually speak truth, and we, like the people of Israel, are only responsible for our own part. Others have roles to play, and we encourage those opportunities for them. By raising her voice, the young girl was able to bring about the healing of her master. His wife, in her turn, also spoke up. Wisely, Naaman took the advice given to him and went to Israel. Despite the great prophet not making an appearance and the strange method of cure that was prescribed, Naaman was finally convinced by his attendants to at least try and see what happened. And behold, by God's grace, Naaman was healed. But throughout the story, there was a rehumanization of individuals, which allowed God's grace to be received. We all need one another. We shape one another. We challenge one another. We learn and we grow together. That is what it is to be human in a world of other humans, all created and loved by God, who calls us all into relationships of justice and reconciliation.